Hello, and welcome to today's episode. What we're about to discuss is more than just a political issue. It touches on social division, moral boundaries, and even the historical destiny of a nation. Today, we're talking about the shocking desecration of Jean-Marie Le Pen's grave. Yes, you heard that right. This highly controversial figure in French politics, who passed away not long ago, was buried only 3 weeks ago, when his grave was violently destroyed. The tombstone, the cross, the commemorative plaque, all smashed to pieces. And it happened in the 21st century, in France. A deeply symbolic and unsettling act that's left many wondering, why did this happen? Who did it? And what does it say about the state of French society today? Jean-Marie Le Pen wasn't just any politician. He was a key figure in the rise of far-right politics in France. He founded the National Front, now known as the National Rally, which has become a powerful force in French politics. For decades, Le Pen was a prominent figure known for his nationalist rhetoric, anti-immigrant stance, and criticism of the European Union. He was a lightning rod for controversy, often making remarks that many considered racist, xenophobic, or even anti-Semitic. His views placed him in direct opposition to much of the mainstream political establishment in France, and yet, his popularity among certain segments of the French population continued to grow. Le Pen's views, particularly his skepticism toward the EU, and his fierce opposition to immigration, resonated deeply with a portion of the French electorate. Many of his supporters saw him as a champion of French identity, standing up against what they viewed as the erosion of national culture and sovereignty. On the other hand, his critics regarded him as a symbol of division, a man who stoked hatred and intolerance in the pursuit of political power. Over the years, Le Pen's words and actions earned him legal consequences, with multiple fines for his controversial statements, including his denial of the Holocaust. Even after his death, Le Pen remains a polarizing figure. His passing did not mark the end of his influence, as his legacy continued to divide the French political landscape. The destruction of his grave, barely 3 weeks after his burial, brings his contentious legacy back into the spotlight, and raises serious questions about the state of French society today. The act of vandalism itself occurred in the dead of night, between January the 30th and 31st. Vandals destroyed not just the tombstone, but also the cross and commemorative plaque that marked his resting place. The images from the scene were stark: a broken monument, a symbol of the man's political life reduced to rubble. This wasn't just an act of mindless destruction. It felt like a statement, a protest aimed squarely at Le Pen's legacy. The response was swift. The French government condemned the act, with Interior Minister Bruno Retailleau calling it despicable and stressing that respect for the dead is a fundamental principle that sets civilized societies apart from barbarism. His words reflect the gravity with which this act was viewed, not just as a political statement, but as an attack on basic societal values. Meanwhile, Jordan Bardella, the leader of the National Rally, made his feelings clear, calling for the perpetrators to be severely punished, and emphasizing that no one, regardless of political views, deserves to have their final resting place desecrated. Le Pen's granddaughter, Marianne Maréchal, who is also a prominent figure in French politics, and a member of the European Parliament, echoed this sentiment. She took to social media to express her anger, stating that while their ancestors' graves had been desecrated, they would not be intimidated. Instead, they would only grow more resolute in their political struggle. The comments from the Maréchal family, and from National Rally supporters, show that this event is about much more than a simple act of vandalism. It's become a rallying cry for the far right, who feel that their ideological opponents have crossed a line by attacking one of their most prominent figures, even after his death. But on the other hand, critics of Le Pen view this act through a very different lens. To them, Le Pen was not a hero or a patriot, but a man whose words and actions sowed division and hatred. They see the destruction of his grave as a symbolic rejection of everything he represented. For some, the vandalism wasn't just mindless violence. It was an act of political resistance, a statement against the far-right ideology that continues to influence French politics. While the far-right views this act as an attack on their ideology, some left-wing commentators see it as a form of protest against the enduring influence of nationalist politics in France. They argue that the rise of extreme right politics, fueled by figures like Le Pen, has led to the fragmentation of French society, with increasing tensions between different groups, especially over issues like immigration, identity, and the country's place in Europe. This incident is only the latest in a long line of politically charged events that have highlighted the growing divisions in French society. In recent years, we've seen a rise in political violence, as both the far left and far right have become more radicalized. This isn't just a French problem, it's part of a broader trend seen in many Western democracies, where populism, nationalism, and identity politics are becoming more dominant, often at the expense of social cohesion. The desecration of Le Pen's grave is a dramatic example of this wider phenomenon, a symbolic act that speaks to the deep rifts within French society. Looking ahead, the repercussions of this event will likely extend beyond just a few angry statements. We may see further political protests, demonstrations, and possibly even more violence as the far left and far right continue to clash. The National Rally may use this incident to rally their base, portraying themselves as victims of a politically motivated attack. Conversely, left-wing groups may use this as further fuel to criticize the rise of far-right politics in France and the dangers they perceive it poses to the country's future. The long-term consequences of this act of vandalism are still unclear, but one thing is certain. It highlights the intense political polarization in France and reflects broader tensions within Western democracies. As the political landscape continues to evolve, it's likely that we'll see more of these kinds of clashes, not just in France, but across Europe and beyond. So, what do you think? Was this a symbolic act of protest against a man whose views divided France for decades? Or was it an unacceptable attack on a political figure, even in death? How do you see the future of France's political divide playing out? Will this intensify the polarization even more? Or could it be a turning point? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation.